number 9, presentation, Macomb County Renovations Monthly Progress Report. Andy, Executive Deldin, tee it up. Thanks. Excuse me. Could you push the button, please, on the microphone? Thank you.
Absolutely. There you go. Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you. We want to give you another periodic update on our our central campus renovation project. The last time we were here, as we checked our records, was in December of 2016. We gave you an update. And now with several new commissioners, we wanted to give another update to kind of show you the big picture and what's going on. With me today is Dave Reese, Mr. Dave Reese, Vice President of the Clark Construction Company, and Andy Fountain. He is our program manager here from Plante, Moran, Cresa, and we're under contract with both those companies. And you guys can have a seat because I won't take that long, but you're making me nervous standing next to me. But, yeah, so. So anyway, so I'm just going to start off really for the benefit of, well, the entire commission, but particularly for the newer commissioners that weren't here in 2013. If you would go to page 9 on your PowerPoint presentation. I actually know how to work this. Oops. How about that? Okay. So I want to concentrate on this page just for a couple of minutes, then I'm going to turn it over to Andy. Back in April of 2013, we had an electrical fire on probably a Wednesday morning, as I recall, about 10 o'clock. The fire alarms went off in the old county building. There was a pipe leak down in the lower level, the basement, so as you traverse that tunnel in between the buildings, back in a pipe chase, there was some plumbing, some hot water lines or heating lines, and there was a pipe leak, and it was leaking over an electrical panel, for lack of a better term. It sparked a fire. No one was hurt. At that time, back in 2013, the building was only about 50% occupied with different departments. You had Register of Deeds was over there, Finance was on the 12th floor, Facilities was on the 13th floor, and then there were the federal division of the prosecutor's office occupied some floors over there and whatnot, but it was only about 50% occupied. The building, while the building had some interior remodeling done to it over its 80-plus years, it never had received a full-scale renovation. There was not fire suppression, that means there was not a sprinkler system throughout the entire building. There was not. It was not handicap accessible. So for those of you that remember that building, at the tops of the internal stairways, there were restrooms at the very top step that, you know, the employees and users of the building went in and out of. And by today's handicap or ADA standards, that would never pass tests to, you know, take a wheelchair or be on crutches and go in and out of a restroom at the top of a stairway. So we had been talking with the board and with then Chief Judge of the Circuit Courts, David Viviano, about bringing that building, you know, up to code, but make it usable. I mean, some of the floors, particularly our Human Resource Department, when I came to work here to fill out my paperwork back in late 2010, I was, you know, somewhat shocked at how the fourth floor, how the Human Resource Department looked. These are, you know, prospective employees' first impression of county government, and you know, the carpet was kind of in shambles, and I mean, it was structurally, it was sound, but it, you know, it looked like we were in our, you know, grandfather's basement with the dark paneling and whatnot. So it definitely needed a facelift. But anyway, no one was hurt in April 2013. We were able to evacuate all 150 people out, and the building was shut down. And we knew at that time that we were not going to be able to reopen it until we did that full-scale renovation. And you know, when you do a full-scale renovation, it triggers codes. Chairman Smith certainly knows that with his background. And you got to bring the entire building up to code. So we knew it was going to be a couple, 3 years. But we couldn't just, you know, bring in the construction crews. We had to really do a full-scale assessment. So in June, just a couple of months later, we engaged with the Plante Moran Cresa, their real estate vision and division in Plante Moran, to do a space utilization study, not only of the old county building, but of the circuit court building, of this building as well, to make sure that everybody is where they should be, and they looked at workflow efficiencies in the types of departments that would be in what buildings and what floors and whatnot. So that was concluded in the fall of 2013. It was then that we went out for a selection process for construction management firm, which the board ultimately ended up approving the Clark Construction Company. We were already under contract with Plante Moran Cresa as a program manager, and then we selected architects, and the two architectural firms that we used is Wakely Associates, whose president Ron Syme is here today, and Partners in Architecture. I don't know if there's a representative from Partners here today or not, but David Gasson and Darren McKenna. So we had a team together, and then we started meeting with department heads and elected officials to look at, to ask a bunch of questions like, is your current space adequate? Are you going to grow in the next 5 years? Do you think your staff is going to grow in the next 5 years? Because we just didn't want to plan something to meet today's needs. Knowing that we were a growing county, we wanted to make sure that we built space for future staffing, if in fact it was needed. So all of that was done. It took all of 2014 to do that, and then in early 2015, we undertook a bid process. By the end of 2014, we kind of stopped designing because there were a couple things played into this. Number one, we had one of our largest county-owned buildings sitting empty, and we knew we needed to get it back open. And there was some discussion about should we tear it down, but I mean, it's a historical landmark. It's been there since 1931, I believe, and we said if we're going to keep it, let's make some functioning space out of it. And yes, that is Commissioner Sauger's face facing the building up there at the top of the building. It's a graduation picture, right, right, yes. So we stopped. So we did an analysis of all three buildings. So when this building was built in the late 1990s, there were 2 floors that had never been built out because it was the thought of the commission back then that we would save it for future expansion. So those floors were built out. It was put into the plan. We had to do a full-scale renovation from the bottom, from the basement of that floor all the way up to the 13th floor. That was done. It was figured into the plan. And then the circuit court building, really what prompted the renovation of the circuit court building was because of the addition of new circuit court judges. I think 1 or 2 are on board, and maybe 1 more is coming in 19, right? So we had to build out space. We had to build courtrooms for the additional circuit court judges. That's what really drove the renovation of some of the circuit court floors. Not all floors are being touched in the circuit court building. So we kind of stopped right there, and we said, contractors or construction manager, Plante Moran, price this out. Let's see where we're at. Do a design estimate, and we were at approximately $65 million. 65 million is kind of where we stopped. We could have kept going, but this was 2014, and we were still kind of coming out of this recession, and we were being mindful. Finance kept saying, we don't want to bond for too much. We ended up, the board ended up approving $45 million in bonds, but the more we borrowed, the bigger our mortgage payment would be, and we had to make sure we could fit that into our general fund budget, the annual debt payment. So kind of $45 million was our limit. We received $9 million, so there was about a $19 million insurance claim that was paid. Much of that money was used to do the remediation, the cleanup, the moving, the stripping, the demoing of the interior of the building. But we ended up walking away with $9 million the county received to put toward remodeling that building. And then, trying to be ever so protective of our fund balance, we used $11 million of fund balance. So we got to the $65 million by the 45 in bonds, the $9 million in insurance, and $11 million fund balance. Again, trying to protect that and not borrow too much money. We knew that $65 million was going to take care of a lot of the needs, but not all of the needs. And I remember having many conversations here at this podium, and some of the commissioners had said, you know, we should really take a look at our 5-year capital plan, and to get economies of scale, we should like fold some of those projects into what's going to happen down here. Because while you have the ceilings open or the walls and all the furniture out, if you need carpet, if you were going to put carpet in the next couple of years, let's do it while the building is open. So we did that. So we knew from the get-go we were going to spend more than $65 million. We just didn't know how much. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with buildings as old as these, you never know what you're going to quite run into as you start opening up the walls. And the architects like to design using as-built drawings. That's a term that's used. And as-built is a certified drawing, like when the building is built, saying this is the way it was built. But again, that building now 85 years old, you know, sometimes things happen or things get renovated with in-house staff and drawings don't get updated. That happens everywhere. So you don't always know what's gonna happen when you get in between the walls and above the ceiling. The other unexpected thing, and Andy will talk about this during his presentation, is that you remember us coming back and telling you about the stairwells, the internal stairwells of the old county building. Just days after the fire, there started to be some cracking, and it got worse as the months went on. And you know, that was about $1 million fix and put the schedule about 6 months behind because of what we were required to do. We encountered a smoke damper issue, something that the city of Mount Clemens made us bring up to code. That was an unexpected cost that Andy will talk about. But point being, and I'll kind of stop right here because you see the rest of the schedule summary. Part of the reason that we're here today is to give you that history, to give you a high-level update of where we're at right now and how much we anticipate the program to cost us. And part of that being is that the program was really supposed to end. If everything went, you know, according to Hoyle, we would have been wrapping up construction. It was about a 2.5-year program. We would have been wrapping up construction this fall. I think it was in August or September was the original plan. But again, when you're hit with unforeseen circumstances, sometimes it puts everybody behind. It's sort of like a domino effect. So now we're anticipating that about a year from now, we'll be wrapping up the work at the Circuit Court building. And it's always difficult when you can't interrupt service, that you have to keep service going. It always presents other challenges. It's not like building something brand new from the ground up. Actually, as challenging as the old county building was, no one was in our way because the building had been evacuated, and that always goes much smoother. So with that, that's kind of the gist of how we got to where we are today. I'm going to turn it over to Andy. Prefer that you probably ask questions if you'd like as we go instead of at the end. So with that.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to update you here on the progress that we've made with the campus renovation project. We'll talk a little bit about the original scope, some of the added scope that's become part of the project. We'll look at Mark kind of hit on the schedule, but we can recap that, look at the budget, and then take some comments. So just to start off, the original scope of the campus renovation project, starting off with what is now the new parking deck. We have a new parking deck in place that's for 600 spaces. That project included also some technology items such as security cameras and access control, as well as some landscaping and underground irrigation. These were all part of the original scope. At the old county building, we had complete renovations of floors 1 through 7 for the front of the court, and we've had complete renovations of floors 8 through 12 for the juvenile court. We have new and renovated bathrooms. We have a full fire suppression. We upgraded some mechanical heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. We had electrical upgrades, technology and infrastructure and equipment upgrades, and we had new furniture throughout the building. Moving on to the admin building, we had the build-out of the 5th floor and renovation of the 3rd and 4th floors for the prosecuting attorney's office. We had, as Mark touched on, we added an internal stairwell between floors 3 and 4. This is an efficiency measure that was incorporated into the project for the prosecuting attorney's office. We built out the 6th floor and relocated the human resources and equalization group from the Talmer building. We renovated the 9th floor for the Board of Commissioners, the space we're in right now. Technology infrastructure upgrades and equipment throughout, as well as new furniture. The circuit court original scope was to renovate the 6th floor for 2 additional courtrooms and central court functions. We renovated half of the 5th floor for 2 additional courtrooms. We had minor renovations for floors 2, 3, and 4, and we renovated the 1st floor for the new jury room and for the clerk's office. We also had technology upgrades and new furniture. The Talmer building, original scope was to renovate the 1st floor, which we then relocated the Register of Deeds office and Vital Records office to the new space. We provided new technology, infrastructure, and equipment, and we provided new furniture on the 1st floor. The Clemens Center original scope is to renovate that space, which will become a storage space for the county to house records and other items for various departments throughout the county. We also had the demolition of the existing parking structure, which that work has been completed. The site restoration is in progress right now. We're continuing to cut the grass and get that space ready for turnover to the county. The next page here will kind of get into some of what has become some of the additional scope items. Items that highlighted in blue were some of the items that we pulled forward from the 5-year capital plan. So as we work through these items, you can take note of that. The new parking structure, we added a new welcome center that was added scope. We also provided a temporary earth retention system. There were some soils conditions that had to be addressed throughout the construction, and so the retention system was put in place, as well as we had some foundation issues, which were addressed with a wall, cast-in-place wall that's underground. For the old county building, we had some exterior restoration of the limestone panels. Yes.
Chairman, did you say ask questions while we're going?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
If I can ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I guess this is for Deputy Executive Deldin. The welcome center, I thought that was included in the original.
No.
No? Okay. Go ahead.
I think it was included in kind of the original
Concept.
drawing, but I think it was pointed out to us that, that this would be great, but it wasn't part of it. I remember that.
Okay. I understand the soil condition. I'm fully aware through the process of all that. Okay, I thought that was included.
Just so you know, we do soil borings, but you don't.
Oh, this
every
one.
place.
I get it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So at the county building, we had exterior restoration of the limestone panels, some caulking and tuck pointing. We had this stairwell issue that came up where we had to reconstruct both stairwells. We had roofing replacement on the 11th and 13th floor. New toilet room in the basement, renovation with heating, ventilation, air conditioning equipment. New front entry doors. We upgraded some lighting for some energy savings. We had a new AV system. We added a courtroom docket system throughout the building. The 13th floor server room upgrades. We had a fire suppression system, and we removed and installed that equipment to facilitate that installation. And we had the elevator renovation that became part of the project.
I'd like to speak
Yes,
to
sir.
the elevator
Yes, sir.
renovation. So about 1 year before we had the fire, we came to the board with a contract that we could bid out to have the elevators replaced, in the circuit court building and the old county building Those elevators, Lynn, I believe at the Circuit Court building, the 4 elevator cars were original from the late 1960s. The 2 elevator cars in the old county building were put in the early 1970s. So we came to you with about a $1.1 million contract to award the replacement of those elevators. It was completely separate from what you're hearing today. The problem was, the challenge that we had, is at the time of the fire in the old county building, one of the cars had already been replaced. It takes weeks, and there's only 2 cars in the old county building, and you couldn't shut them down both at once. That car was replaced while the old county building was open. But then what really presented a challenge for us is before we could reopen this building, which we did about a year ago, we had to get that second elevator replaced in order to open it. So while we had companies bringing up furniture, we only had 1 car available to us. Some of the contractors were still putting finishes in many of the rooms, the ceiling tile and carpet and whatnot. We had 1 elevator. So you can probably imagine the congestion that we had. I mean, I think Clark was employing 1 person every day just to be an elevator operator. And it was really challenging, but again, those are some of the things that put us behind. It was completely unforeseen because it was a contract that we and the board entered into even before the fire. So just wanted to put that out.
Thank you. Moving on to the administration building, we have, we added the renovation of the 7th floor for the Planning and Economic Development Department. We also added some carpet replacement, some lighting and furniture replacement as part of the project on the 7th floor. We refinished terrazzo in the lobby as part of the project. We also added fireproofing on floors 5 and 6 and at the parking garage as needed. There's additional heating and ventilation and air conditioning controls and sound transfer elbows there were some sound issues that we addressed as a result of the renovation. Lighting upgrades, again, for some energy savings. We had exterior fire suppression replacement at the canopy and at the underground garage. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm trying to get somebody's attention here. Question on the old county building. Let's go back a panel. My understanding, were there solar panels on the roof there? Because my understanding was 10 years ago, the solar panels were put up there, that high amperage and low amperage wiring was put in and so on and so forth. Was any of that nonsense done?
No, that's never been solar panels up there.
Really? Okay. Well,
Thank you, Commissioner Duje. I have one question since we're here, and it goes back to the last item, I think, on the last slide, and the additional card readers and the electronic. I think we clicked to the next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just went back to the
There you
county
go.
building. Yes.
Updated hardware for new
Yep.
and existing card readers. That wasn't anywhere in the existing capital plan. I thought I heard about that a long time ago, that we were doing all that. I mean, not that it matters necessarily, but I thought we had that security plan in place.
Yeah, from day one, there was we talked about some limited card reader access on every floor, but not to do every single, like in your office suite, not to do every single interior door, very, very expensive, but to do key doors on each floor, and I think every department had an elected official was met with to see what doors they wanted. Some of that grew in scope.
We have more key doors than we thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of it was,
So it should be part blue and part black, right? So some of it was included.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. I just want to make sure.
That's a fair assessment, yes.
All right, thanks.
One other item in here, we did have additional renovations to the scope for the boardroom that became part of the admin building renovation. We have, for the circuit court, we updated the public toilet rooms as part of the project. There were some audio-visual upgrades to the courtrooms that became incorporated into the project through the technology group. We also had some lighting upgrades, again, for energy savings. It's been a big item that we've advocated for throughout the project. It provides a very good opportunity for quick payback and continued savings for the district, or for the county. We had the server room upgrades. We added a pre-action fire system. We also have smoke damper and shaft wall with some controls upgrades that became part of this project. That issue arose from a design review, and the city indicated that we had to bring the building up to code, seen as a life safety issue, that we prioritized that and made it part of the project, along with the city, at the city's direction. We installed a new fiber optic line. We have some owner-requested revisions for the 5th and 6th floor. We added some couple sinks in some of the conference rooms, a few other items, and we also we have carpet replacement throughout the entire building that's being coordinated into the project. For the Clemens Center, we have the replacement of the rooftop unit. That's a item that we'll be pulling forward for consideration as we move forward to bidding out that project here in the fall. Yes, sir.
Sorry, just so I'm clear, when you say owner requested revisions, you just mean whoever's on that floor? Like if it was this
Department.
floor, we would be the owner, and
That's
you guys
correct.
would,
So,
okay.
I mean, not on every floor, but in a lot of cases, it's really hard for some people that maybe don't work with this type of stuff all the time to look at a blueprint. And, you know, we had everybody kind of sign off saying, yes, you designed exactly what I want. But until the walls go up and you see where maybe there's some sightline issues, they would sometimes request changes. We always try to keep it at a minimum, because then you end up with a change order and it has to hit our contingency. But some really did make sense. But not anybody can just request it. You know, there's an internal process that ultimately has to be signed off either by Lynn or myself or both of us. We really try to correct it, but sometimes they have really valid points.
Understand.
And
I just wanted,
again, we try
just wanted to clear up
Yeah.
when it says owner requested, it's just whoever is the general
Yes.
owner of that floor.
Owner department.
Right,
Yep.
got it.
I got a question follow-up, if I could, Mr. Chairman. On that owner revision, the 6th and 5th floor, those are going to be the new courts, right?
That's correct.
And that's the revisions in preparation for the new courts, or were these revisions done? I guess they're under construction right now,
They are
right?
under, yeah, so they are under construction right now. There were some items that, as we progressed through the project, that they were identified through conversations with the staff, the court administrator, that we would like to look at maybe adding these items and incorporating them into the project. What would that take? So then we
Okay.
reviewed those items and then prioritized them, ran them through the executive's office, and then proceeded.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman.
So moving on to the, Mr. Deldin already kind of ran through the program schedule, but we started in April of 13. Our original program completion date was fall of 17. Through some of the smoke dampers issue, the stairwell issue, we've had and a few other items, we've extended the schedule. Right now, we're targeting summer of 18, and we're looking at every opportunity to accelerate that date if it presents itself. So, moving on to the financial snapshot, as Mr. Deldin had indicated, the program funding came from four different sources. We had bonds, we had a general fund money, we had an insurance claim, and we also had the capital plan fund. When we updated you back in December of 16, the project had been updated to $69 million. To date, we have $69 million in committed contracts. We're projecting out additional $5 million. We've paid $53 million to date, and we have an owner contingency balance of around $423,000. So the additional $5 million that's added to the program, to the project budget, these items are used to complete additional scope that's been part of the campus project that includes departmental or owner requests, and other code issues that we've addressed throughout the project. We continue to look for opportunities to pull forward projects that offer savings to the county. I've mentioned a couple of times in the presentation, lighting upgrades really lends to ongoing operational savings through your utility budgets as you work through the payback period, and then we realize that savings moving forward. We've also, as we've increased the project scope and we've had schedule extensions, we also it's also required that we add additional staffing to the project.
Andy?
Yes,
Sorry,
sir.
real quick. What does owner contingency balance mean?
So within the project, we build in, we have a contingency that's assigned to the owner for them to use to offset any field conditions or other items that arise throughout the project that wouldn't necessarily fall under what we call construction contingency. Construction contingency is money that's set aside that's part of Clark Construction's contract that they use for items that arise as a result of coordination issues or other items that come up as a result of the construction that they use to fund those items.
Okay, so that's a balance that we have kind of waiting there, and if we don't use it all, it comes back to the county, right?
That's correct.
So it's kind of, okay, great.
That's correct.
Thanks. Commissioner Carabelli had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. Deputy Executive Deldin, I need to understand something here with these numbers, looking at them. We bonded for how much?
45 million.
Okay. And we received how much in,
9 million
Nine.
insurance proceeds,
okay,
and we used 11 million in fund balance.
okay,
Provided 65 million.
okay. 65 million.
Right.
Of that 65 million, what percent contingency do we agree upon with the contractor? Or is it a percentage?
That's a good question. I need to go research that and give you what exactly that number is. I don't want to misspeak, but I can research that and get back to you on
Okay.
exactly what
And
that
to
number
lead
is.
into that, to go on, I'd like to know what the total overall was. And then I'd also like to know, because I do know I was a proponent and an advocate of pushing for Lynn to have projects done during the same time to get the benefit of contractors on site and getting a better deal of replacing maybe 3 rooftops instead of 1, and we're bringing it forward in our capital plan, but paying for it out of our capital plan is what I thought. So maybe I misunderstood that, and I need to know, were those already coming out of our fund separately from this, from the capital plan that we had allocated it for?
Probably a combination of both. So some of the economies of scale we got, because maybe it was a good bidding environment at the time we bid a mechanical project, and maybe we were able to replace a rooftop unit. That was part of the 5-year capital plan.
No, and I'm agreeing, and I'm
And
saying
in
yes.
other
But
cases,
with that said, did that come out of the 69 million, or did that come out of her capital replacement plan?
Again, it's been a combination of both. Carpet replacement for one, lighting replacement. Lynn says, I was going, in the old county building or the circuit court building, let's put an LED while we have this room empty. Let's put an LED, and she's going to pay for it out of her capital plan budget. So there's been a combination of things.
Okay, with that said, and I guess maybe this is more towards for Lynn, or however we want to answer this, is that, when we had a program and we went through some old county buildings before this process, we did a bunch of replacement of lights. We did get huge rebates from the federal government. Is this being applied for the federal government for rebates since we're doing this huge program right now?
Yes, we apply for any rebates available.
Because I'm talking substantial, it was millions of dollars the last time we received in grants to help offset the cost.
I haven't used grants, it's rebates through DTE or consumers.
You have or have not?
We have.
We have, okay,
Yeah.
because that has not been shared with us, and again, I know change of government, it used to be shared with us, and again, those are big numbers. And then, my whole thing was, and I said even Lynn in the beginning, when we replace these lights, to realize the savings, so you just don't take a bunch of savings, throw it back in a big kitty, and say, hey, we got more money, we're just not spending it. I wanted to set it in a separate account, so all of a sudden you're generating millions of dollars to continue replacing programs around the county. Nothing to do with the current project, but this is something that I strongly suggested that we do, and I don't believe we had done that yet. So, we're gonna realize savings, I get it, but we're not gonna capture those savings. They're gonna go into a big pie.
Well, I guess just, I'm just going to state another way to look at it, is we're trying to cut our operational costs to, during the Great Recession, to keep the lights on, so to speak, or to keep the bill. We're using those savings so we don't have to cut other programs or areas. So it's still being put to good use. My point is, especially during those lean years that we experienced.
We can respectfully disagree, because as you take it to plug a hole somewhere else, you could have saved it and then done everything we owned and saved even more money and had a ton at the end of the day because everything's brand new. So we can agree to disagree. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Else? Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Drolet just queued in.
Well, I almost done the presentation, I can wait till the end. I'll withdraw and wait till the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So the next slide, just to give you the program overview with the budget, there's, the original program budget was 65 million. We've had, as of today, we've had ads that break out into different categories as such, field conditions, some design changes, owner-directed revisions. We've had some value engineering that we've identified and realized throughout the project. And then we have some additional professional fees that bring us to the $74 million figure.
Amy, can you explain the PCO summary that's in the packet that probably no one understands?
Yes, so there's, ahead of the meeting, there was what we call PCO, or potential cost item summaries that we provided for each project. And what these summaries allow us to do is to look at not only the total cost of the project, but how those costs break out into these in different categories, whether they're owner-directed changes, if they're field conditions, if they're contract items. So taking, for example, if you look at the new parking deck, we have the original total of $15,906,000. We had revisions that bring us up to a grand total of $16 million. They break out across the column on the right-hand side into the original contract, field conditions. We've had design changes. We've had the owner-directed column, which breaks then into 3 different columns for whether it was an operations item, if it was an IT item, or if it was a departmental request. And then we have buyout or contract, and then we have the value engineering column. And then you have what was construction contingency for that project. Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The value engineering is in a parentheses. Now, I'm not an accountant, but usually when something's in a parentheses, it means a different.
It means that we're deducting that from the project. Yes.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
a value engineering item would be like a cost savings opportunity that we may
Gotcha.
find within the project, and then that was brought forward for consideration and review, and if it's accepted, then we realize that in
Okay.
the project.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Drolet?
Okay, I'm gonna ask my question now because I'm worried we're gonna go through all these pages of this draft.
That was not the intent.
stuff.
That was not the intent.
Oh, good. But I guess my question then is Deputy Deldin. We're $9 million different from what we had originally planned to pay for it. Is there a proposal then for that for us to come up with that $9 million? Is there a specific proposal?
Well, when you saw when we introduced.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, can you speak into the mic just so that everybody can hear?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Make him nervous. Stand next to him. There you go.
I'm gonna sit down.
When Commissioner Drolli, when we presented the 5-year capital plan, part of the revisions of the capital plan was to include that $74 million number, correct, Steve? It was one of the line items that was in there. So that additional cost for the additional projects that we've done the last 2.5 years will come from the capital project fund.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any other speakers. If you have more to continue with, or?
That's the that concludes the presentation.
All right. Any other questions from any speakers? Oh, Commissioner Sauger.
Yeah, I just was curious, what was done on the elevators I know they were redone, but was that new cable, new pulleys, the whole shot put into them?
I assume you're talking at the county building? Is it at the old county building, is that what you're referencing as far
Yeah.
as which project? So both the cabs were essentially refurbished to modernize them. This actually was a project that was handled through the Facilities and Operations Department. Lynn, would you mind maybe giving an update?
Yes, they changed a lot of the internal equipment in the elevator, so it wasn't just a cosmetic upgrade.
Okay.
It was control work.
Now, is there, the company that put them in, is there a representative nearby that they don't have to call down Detroit? If something happens, they gotta wait till he gets up here?
We still have to do that, unfortunately. If there is an entrapment, we call the fire department, and they're trained to open up the elevators.
I gotta tell you a story about it, and you guys gotta listen to it. When I was on a department, we had the elevators stuck in between with people aboard. That happened many a times. We pried it open with a couple of screwdrivers, and we took a bunch of straws, attached them together, put them into bottles so the people could drink water. And that's what we did, because the people that took care of the elevators had to come from Detroit.
Yes, and it's very dangerous to attempt to remove somebody from an elevator that way, because if you don't have it shut off and power kicks on, it can be very tragic.
Okay.
And in those days, coming by horse, it took a long time.
Yeah, from Armada.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lynn, stay right up there. And one of the things you were talking about trying to save in the project, I'll give you an example. At the front of the court, they had in the front of the court hearing, the referee hearing rooms, when it was first put into place in January, those rooms had these benches or pews in the back. And it became really apparent that it was difficult to maneuver. And I know it's just a small cost savings. What has happened to those pews or benches? What have we done with those? They've been removed.
I'm going to place those in the lobby and most likely the 6th floor.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I just have one question, just out of curiosity. Do we know where elections is going to end up?
Yes.
In the Clemens Center.
Elections will be in the Clemens Center?
Yes.
I'm sure they're happy about that.
Permanently, nice space. Our F&O department
Good.
built out space for them. They're moving in right after.
Right after Labor Day.
Okay. All right, thank you. I don't see any other, Commissioner Carabelli on round two?
Deputy Executive Deldin, again, I'd like to see the contingency total of what we had.
Yep. We'll get that
And I'd like to see what was pulled out of capital programs for Lind, what was spent out of there. And again, I know we planned, there was a plan, we pulled projects ahead, but I thought we were taking money out of that fund and not adding it to this, and that's where I have a disconnect.
Got it.
So I need to know what those numbers were in dollar figures, if I could, somebody can get
We'll
that.
provide that to the board I'm not sure when the next infrastructure meeting is, where you give them your monthly update. We can provide one of those meetings. We'll need some time, and Lynn will have to work with Andy to pull those numbers together. And we have the information.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Just a short statement. Gentlemen, you both made a great presentation. Deputy Deldin, thank you for bringing the new commissioners up to date on what started when and how, and the progress of what started it, or I should say the beginning of what started all of this. It has enlightened me, and hopefully the other commissioners who are relatively new, but it's a great presentation from both you gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was okay. So, I don't see any other speakers on there, so I'd like a motion to receive and file. It's moved by Romano, supported by Toko. Please vote. Motion passes.